So if you found your way to this video, it means that you have an interest in contemporary art and curation and potentially pursuing a career in curating contemporary art. So we're here to tell you a little bit about our journey as independent curators, the lessons we've learned along the way, and what we think the most important points are to accessing this field in a sustainable way. So the kind of content that you can expect from us includes how to establish your credibility within the art community. In other words, how you can create a trusted brand for yourself and your company, and also developing a methodology for exhibition making, practical examples of the skills that you might need, and certain how-tos like charging for your services. I'm Shona.
I'm Heinrich, and we have a company called RESERVOIR. The concept around the industry or around the idea of curatorship is quite vast, and it's hard to determine or pinpoint exactly where it begins or ends. I think for a lot of people, a curator would be somebody that is the custodian of a museum collection or a particular archive, or works within research and builds exhibitions around that. But contemporary art curation also sits within the realm of commercial activities, of creating work that comes directly from the artist's studio.
This is also what can make it really difficult to know where to start, because there isn't a specific model that we can follow and look to try and emulate. What we'd like to chat about is the different kind of standards and kind of nodes, touchstones really, that you can keep in mind for maintaining professional practice. And this can include everything from project management, supplier relations, the courtesy and respect that you show towards artists and their needs, and maintaining certain industry standards with regards to archiving and documentation.
So one of the main ideas that we've built RESERVOIR around is the idea of collaboration. It's been both perhaps the impetus of why we decided to work together and how we see each other and the role we have towards one another as equal partners in this company, but also similarly how we choose to work with artists and their ideas, other art spaces that we work with, writers, curators, essentially just people who have ideas that they want to manifest within the creative art world, and we would like to be a part of that.
We started our kind of journey having both studied fine art and then working as art administrators in various spaces, and we find this is quite a common path for curators and gallerists in South Africa. So in that, our resources developed in quite a different way, and each in their unique way, and that's where we saw the potential as well for collaboration, because we bring different resources to the table. And we saw this as an opportunity to start working independently. So really everything we're going to talk about in these segments has to do with independent curation. So outside of existing institutions, maybe with collaborating with existing institutions, but not being employed by them. So the name RESERVOIR actually reflects this idea as well. This idea of this pool that's constantly added to of knowledge, of resources, and I think very importantly, what this whole Art School Africa course is really aimed at, expanding your networks.
One thing that we've noticed is that there is a lot of shift from maybe initially following the more traditional model where artists and galleries have this kind of like codependent relationship, and there's a very clear and almost, one could argue, strict structure around how work is created and presented, and we see people moving away from the structure and finding new ways of innovating the practice. And one of the ways that we see this happening is through new formations like collectives or people pulling together their resources and ideas to create new avenues for presenting art.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably this is all from a motivation or a desire to become more independent and to show projects that they might not be able to within the very commercial agenda of contemporary art galleries.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a trend beyond what we're doing. That's also something that we're seeing a lot. It might have been enhanced or furthered a lot faster by the pandemic, and for us we see the need to want to show art in person and see art in person. and this is a very big part of our agenda as well.
I think it might be important to, in this context, acknowledge the commercial desire for selling art. I think that's a lot of what supports and sustains the creative art world in South Africa, for instance, where maybe there's a lack of ample government funding to support the arts. And through that, we've seen a lot of art consultants working with artists directly and selling work from their studios, creating kind of like events and happenings around their studios, and working with their client lists more directly through, say, social media or mailing lists.
I mean, that's a very important point in maintaining the careers of artists and keeping the commercial side of the environment flowing. But what we like to kind of enhance or augment that with is also this idea of showing work, of putting together high quality exhibitions and creating context around the work, showing the works within relation to one another and elevating it in that respect.
Since Reservoir was formed, how we've applied this idea of collaboration ourselves, having noticed what are the trends happening around us, having kind of kept an ear to the ground as to what is the desire of artists and what is this kind of trend around independent working and working together independently, and what would that look like. We've engaged in quite a variety of different projects, but more publicly we've created exhibitions with other existing art spaces. We've done this in a way that will expand in future videos, but in a way that is both beneficial to us, the artists, as well as the art space that we've collaborated with. So we've done about 4 exhibitions so far. They've all been group shows, which has developed further into further collaborations that have opened up since then.
Yeah, so mostly this is done by working with unrepresented or independent artists, and we've built our program in conjunction with these commercial spaces. So basically, practically how it works is that we act as like a project manager. So we facilitate the entire process of putting together the exhibition, the writing, the practical elements, the consignment agreements, etc., which is also something that we'll expand a little bit more in some of our future segments. Yeah, essentially it's a mutually beneficial relationship in that we're introducing and facilitating the introduction of new artists to these existing spaces, and in return we're also relying on their support structures that are already in place.
Mm-hmm.
So like the existing collector bases,
their supply relations, yeah. And then that kind of continues beyond the exhibition, where we're also involved in kind of the aftercare of the exhibition. What happens and how do we maintain these consignment agreements that different parties have signed to? How do we ensure that artworks are always dealt with special care and delivered to the right places? Kind of continuing the communication with clients and collectors. One of Reservoir's aims is to also be highly invested in the artist's career.
Yeah.
And this means that through exhibition making, creating these kind of like what we consider to be very high standard exhibition practice, presenting artists' work in ways that is both like critically and socially involved in the environment that we live in, that speaks to the artists around them as well, that has a certain kind of connectedness to the kind of global contemporary art standard, if you will. We also feel like it's very important to find ways to introduce artists to to kind of the broader sector of the art world, to specific institutions, to museum collections, to very reputable private collections that builds artist CVs, that sees independent artists working in this corner of the world in Cape Town, being able to connect to a more global audience, essentially to take their work from here and further their careers. So that's also part of how we brand ourselves, that we are fully and thoroughly committed to what happens to artists and their work.
So obviously there are a lot of practical kind of discussions that we would cover in our future segments of exactly what it is, how we do this, how we maintain a collector base, and
similarly also a few ideological ideas that we would love to share with you about how we see contemporary art existing in the current age. So stay tuned.